Greetings and welcome to the Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team video, where today I'm going over the winners and losers from the April 2025 Balance Dataslate. Before we go into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, and a affiliate link at Element Games, and a affiliate link discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. But let's get on with the video. So what happened with the latest Balance Dataslate? So it was the second Balance Dataslate of the new edition. So the last one was at the end of January. So it had been 3 months. Lots of teams actually got buffed, and these were mostly the underperforming kill teams from the stats, as well as some other changes here and there. In the general sense, Eldari teams got a big brunt of the nerfs, there were some other teams that got nerfed, but it was mostly Eldari teams who got hit the most. Sanctifiers saw an emergency nerf, so they have only been out for about 4 weeks, so this is an emergency nerf, and they did get hit, but not in a huge way. But otherwise, I'd recommend checking out the full Balance Dataslate review for everything. I won't cover every faction here, because not all factions are winners and losers. Some just stayed exactly the same. But I'll be covering most, because there actually were a lot of changes. So without further ado, let's get on with the winners. So starting off with the Vespid Stingwings, they are now an 11 operative kill team. They got an extra operative, which is in their box, so now you have 11 activations. They have slightly better melee via Sting, going from 3 attacks, hitting on 4s to 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, 3/4, lethal 5-up shock, which is not bad, it's all right. The Oversight Drone is more flexible, as this ability no longer requires the other Vespid needing visibility to get lethal 5-up, so you can now more safely shield the drone, you know. It's not expendable, which would have been lovely, but it's still very useful. And then the Long Sting and the Swarm Guard got buffed. The Long Sting's Neuro Shard does actually now does damage when an operative activates at the start of the turning point and they stack. And the Swarm Guard now has an 8-inch move with its Sky Torture. It does cost 2 action points, which is very nice. However, they still struggle to play the crit up, right? You have basically 10 operatives who can do mission actions, because the Oversight Drone just flies around going wee. But the problem is, I mean, this is why I really would have liked them to go to movement 7. You effectively have to ignore trying to win the crit up as Vespid. You're always going to be able to save your own objective, but when it comes to the opponent's objectives, that's really unreachable. You're just trying to fight over the mid, but more importantly, you're just probably playing confirm kill and the kill op, which is fun. They're still very fun to play, but unfortunately they are probably still the worst kill team in the game. Then we've got Hernkyn Yaegirs. They were huge winners. Masterful blade work shows your opponent that this is a knife, because basically it now gives +1 attack and balanced if your knives didn't already have balance, and if they had balance they have ceaseless, so very, very nice. Shotgun Warrior is now basically the best / better warrior option, because before you would go to knives for the 4 attack, but if you're spending a CP for masterful blade work, you have a shotgun with 4 attacks hitting on 3s, 4/4 damage, with 4 attacks hitting on 4s, 3/5 lethal 5-up balanced, versus a pistol and then 4 attacks with the blades with ceaseless. Right, so the shotgun wearers are just unfortunately better now. Operatives already with knives go to ceaseless when you spend the CP for masterful blade work, which is most importantly a knife fighter and your leader, which is really good for those two. Stalwart Defense, the firefight ploy, is now longer providing -1 to hit when you are shooting into someone's charge, which is great. It means it hurts your opponents more when they try and charge you. And you can actually play Seek and Destroy now. With the Masterful Blade Work change, you can actually trigger Overrun more easily, even theoretically Champion, especially with Shotgun Warriors. So this is actually really, really useful. And they have a very good position in the meta overall. I still personally think they're a little bit weaker. I would have liked 1 more resourceful point for them to use per turning point. That would have been great. But I think they occupy a really nice spot. Remember, they've always got this damage negation active. They're 8 wounds. They've got a lot of flexibility now. They play their Talc Ops better. If you're a Hernkyn Yaegir player, you should be really happy about now. Then we've got Kasrkin. They are winners. The Recon Trooper provides more synergy to the team. So when enemy operatives are within 8 inches of the Recon Trooper and you're scanning them, it unlocks more of your abilities. Skillet arms are better and easier to use, so it's more easier to trigger severe. Generally, they've all been buffed, so they're actually more usable. Your accuracy got buffed, with Clearance Sweep now granting ceaseless instead of balanced. So you're hitting on 3s with ceaseless. Very, very good. So you're really likely to get all 4 hits when you shoot. And Tactical Command provides a flexible operative every turning point because it allows your leader to pick one operative to have 2 skiller arms active, 2 different ones, so you can actually have a lot of flexibility. I still don't think makes them amazing. They're really, really good at shooting now and they have an identity. Personally, I would like if they had a skiller arms that allowed them to do a mission action for 1 free action point like they could last edition. Well, the compendium could, which means you could have a now more useful like mission action tool. But otherwise, they're in a really solid spot, and at least now they have an identity, something they were kind of lacking before. So Kasrkin are in a great spot too. Now we go on to Tempestus Aquilons. They are huge winners. They are also an 11 operative team now for some reason, right? Hot Drop is way more usable now. It's no longer just when you land. It's also while you're wholly within enemy territory, which means it's usable turning point 3 on 4, which is great. And the Precursor gets Ceaseless now, which makes it more reliable and less ploy dependent. But it does mean when you've got your accuracy ploys up, it can have Balanced and Ceaseless, which basically gives it Relentless. So you've got really, really a lot of use out of that knife. Unfortunately for Kasrkin, I don't see why you would ever play Kasrkin now. With Tempestus Aquilons, I think it was wrong to give them this 11 operative, but now they have it because you have 10 Aquilons in the Sentry, which is 10 wounds with a free up save. That 11th activation really swings things, means only 12 activation teams can actually play around you turning point 2 with your drop shenanigans. It's crazy. Very, very good that this team now has 11 activations. Probably too good. This is when it's like really dangerous to give a team +1 activation, like +1 operative. But if you're an Aquilon player, this is great. You can now stall out more. You're more offensive. You don't care too much if you don't get too much offensive done, like turning point 2, because now you can still use Hot Drop turning point 3. Really a menace to lots of teams out there. So Tempestus Aquilons are terrifying now. Then we got Pathfinders. They're really huge winners. They got all the gun back. All their gun is back. Markalites now grant +1 to hit for the second option, with less work than last edition, because last edition you had to get 3 Markalite tokens on someone. Now you only need to get 2 to get Balance, Saturate, and +1 to hit. Wow, that's totally fine. You can gun into melee better, so when someone charges you with point blank fusillade and you have an engage order, you strike first and you still get the Markalite buffs, which is great. The fusion grenade is still not heavy reposition like other specialist grenades, so you can reposition dash and throw a fusion grenade in someone's face, especially turning point 1, which is, don't worry, it's fine. You just have to avoid melee teams because Goremongers and Fellgor are absolute kryptonite to this team. It's still an impossible matchup, but if you're not playing into those teams, my gosh, it's in for a world of pain. It's like, when you give someone back all the gun, there is like danger. So I think Pathfinders are going to be terrifying for everyone who's not a Pathfinder player, and Pathfinder players are just going to be ecstatic. There's so many tricks. People are going to learn all the tricks we have, and it's going to be terrifying for them. Then we have Blades of Khaine. They were winners. Basically, they were the only Eldari team to dodge nerfs, ignoring Mandrakes. That's my only mention of Mandrakes. They're still great into most of the meta, right? They've got lots of shenanigans with their aspect warriors and aspect techniques. They now do well in 2 elites as well as wide horde teams, and they're now positioned better than the other Eldari teams overall, in my opinion. I think they're probably the best Eldari team with all the other changes everyone else has gotten. And, they have some play into Sanctifiers. You've got how they, matchups heavily change when you skew into one aspect of a different type. So they actually have a lot of tools to play around. They're still not the strongest kill team, but they're still very powerful. Gellerpox Infected were winners. Drawn to the Hum got better range, so you now only have to be within 2 inches of an objective to get +1 move instead of 1 inch. Blessing of Infection rewards when you roll poorly or amazingly now. So the only thing that's changed is now if you get 3 or more hits, you can discard a miss to turn a hit into a crit, which actually makes your leader even more useful and allows you to basically go with the rending option, change up his keywords a bit. Mutoid Vermin are 1 for 4 now, so it grants you more equipment options, because before, if you wanted to have 4 Mutoid Vermin, it would cost you 2 equipment points, so now just cost 1, so you have more equipment to play around with, which is great. You are still slowed by universal equipment options such as stun grenades and razor wire, but you have ways to remove it with your own faction equipment, albeit unreliably. but Gellerpox Infected are in a great position. I think the only thing that really holds them back is the fact Hulks are easier to kill and that they're movement 5. If they were movement 6, I think, wow, Gellerpox would be a big problem for everyone. Now people have to respect Gellerpox. I think they're still going to struggle on certain maps and into certain faster opponents with like high damage, but otherwise Gellerpox are in a great spot. Brood Brothers are big winners. They have consistently been overperforming for the last 3 months in all forms of competitive play and have somehow seen no nerfs, which is mystifying but still great for the faction. They still have amazing shooting power, turning point 1 with Ruthless Coordination, because especially with their free scouting move up with Covert Geysers, they can easily get someone up, especially when they spend a CP to dash after someone's activation, like 15 inches up the board, and then shoot someone within 2, or get someone else within 2, and then spend a CP for Ruthless Coordination. Oddly, that was one of the turning point 1 interactions that wasn't touched at the moment, which allows Brood Brothers to get a lot of surprise damage turning point 1. But generally, they have lots of powerful abilities in general, especially when it comes to the Yaegirs. The Yaegirs does a number of melee teams being able to visibly like just make you -1 APL, and then it's psychic shooting. Well, it's not a shooting attack, it's psychic damage, getting around a lot of abilities. They're still a vulnerable team. Like if they get rushed down and they lose their key pieces too quickly, they still fall apart. But I think they're still very worried about Sanctifiers and Goremongers, but otherwise Brood Brothers are huge winners. Deathcore are winners as well. Clear the Line now grants Severe while you're wholly within your own territory and when you're retaliating, which is nice, you know, especially with hand axes. It means into a lot of teams you're always going to be hitting back for 4 damage, which messes up like other Horde teams as well, and even Elite. It's great ways to chip through people. So, you know, you could just scream Bionic Arm, fisting people as they kill you. It's great. And then you've got lots of threat now from shooting and melee with great consistency. When you're shooting, you've got Accurate 1 and you've got Ceaseless on everyone. They're really, really flexible and now just like epitomize like of grinding you down with all the threats they have. They're still not the best, right? Their attack ops aren't great because unfortunately Seek and Destroy still kind of sucks if you're not an elite kill team. But otherwise, Deathcore, really, really good spot. Scout Squad are also winners. They also have a knife, right? Everyone has been sharpening their knives this Balance Dataslate. I don't know, I feel very at home where in London, like everyone's sharpening their knives. I'm like, oh, it's so nostalgic. All 45 damage at the cost of 1 attack as equipment. So if you take them as general equipment now, they are 3 attacks, hitting on 3s 4-5 instead of 4 attacks hitting on 3s 3 attacks hitting on 3s 4-5 instead of 4 attacks hitting on 3s 3-5. And your standard melee warriors, so like your warriors with knives and your knife fighter, they go up to 4-5 basic now, so you don't have to spend an equipment point on that, which is great. Emboldened Aspirant is also much easier to use. You just have to be fighting someone with a higher wounds characteristic, which is really useful. Helps with that elite matchup, especially with your buffed knives. So overall, Scouts still have a lot of play. I would have liked an extra scouting option, like so they had 7 scouting options instead of 6. But otherwise, they're really showing that they have got a lot of power. Like I've even seen them beat Sanctifiers. So there's a lot of play with Scout Squad. We just need to see what people dig up. But at the moment, they're in a really good spot as well. Goremongers are winners. They saw no nerfs. So you know what that means. More squats. Squats for the Skull Throne. They're great into every kill team that isn't an elite kill team. And you know what? Even elite kill teams aren't too bad. Like I've been looking into Goremongers and been chatting with other players, and I think they still have a lot of play into elites, especially with your operative that has brutal and charging into operatives with full blood tanks for relentless. You actually have a lot of tools into elite teams. They're not as impossible as people think. But they are the new Fellgor, but faster, better, harder, stronger. Like, you know, you still have your super damage negation in melee. The shooting one's fine, and you've got your crazy heal for healing 2d3. So this team becomes a real problem. They at the moment gatekeep everything that isn't an elite kill team. A lot of more powerful Horde teams either auto lose or are terrified of Goremongers. And because Goremongers are so popular, they're going to have a huge sway over the meta, which I think will only grow until they see some changes. Chaos Cult, they're winners. They're sole winners. I got it back to front. Torments can't use explosives grenades now, so they can't throw cracks or frags. I'm sure Chaos Cult players are really saddened by that. You can still make 2 Torments per turning point, and Torments still keep accurate too. This is something we all thought one of those would go, and it turns out they didn't. So, you know, and Unleash the Demon remains entirely vague about timing windows for when that ploy actually triggers during someone's activation, which is also weird because Games Workshop spent a lot of the Balance Dataslate clarifying in timing windows for ploys. So Chaos Cult literally like made bank. It was just like, it's just such a confusing nerf because it doesn't impact the team that much, but Chaos Cult players will be loving it. Plague Marines are also winners. Cloud of Flies got reduced in range. It was 3 inches, now it's 1 inch. So it's effectively a bad smoke grenade-ish. And it's now another firefight ploy. So if you think about it, Plague Marines effectively now have 2 strategy ploys and 6 firefight ploys, which means you just... You know, Cloud of Flies was kind of too good in like where you could play aggressively. It's now an entirely a defensive tool, but I would have liked it changed in some way. I was expecting them to hit the healing. I honestly think the healing should just be 2d free from the medic instead of the, it's rolled a 7. But I guess they've just wanted to hit the Cloud of Flies first. You still get to shoot out of it without being obscured, which is nice, but it's much harder to use. Otherwise, they saw no other nerfs, and they're a reliable counter into a lot of the big meta threats currently. Like, they're really great into Sanctifiers, they're great into Goremongers and other elite kill teams. They do suffer, like, obviously, because they're Seek and Destroy and Security. Their tac ops aren't the best, and if you make mistakes, despite how forgiving Plague Marines are, you can still lose. But they're in a great spot. Like Chaos Cult, they're just, like, ecstatic. The weirdest nerfs they got, which is like not even that impactful. I know a lot of Death Guard players are upset about the change of Cloud of Flies, but it's just an entirely defensive tool now. So in my opinion, Plague Marines, just like Chaos Cult, are big winners despite being nerfed. Angels of Death are winners. Their bad matchups got nerfed. You will know the Eldari teams got nerfed. So the fact those got nerfed makes Angels of Death better as a whole because they were naturally predated by Eldari kill teams. Jeweler remains unchanged. You know, Jeweler is probably too strong where it exists right now. I think personally, you could probably just make it, you can only use 1 bullet point per sequence, so you can't use the double parry and blocking a crit. But I could also see them removing the crit parry. But it is kind of the only thing keeping Angels of Death relevant at the moment. But I do think Jeweler needs to be addressed. Otherwise, they're positioned well to deal with a lot of popular meta threats. For example, because everyone's taking Jeweler's primary, it messes up a lot of melee teams, especially Goremongers and Sanctifiers to an extent. And as I said, their bad matchups got nerfed, so they're, you know, breathing a bit of more of a sigh of relief. They still have to watch out for Chaos Cult, but with Jeweler and stuff, now they can stage up better against, like, Sanctifiers. They probably have a better matchup in the Sanctifiers. So Angels of Death, yeah, they're doing great despite seeing nothing happen to them apart from the counteract change. And I do need to clarify, I did clarify in the comments of the Balance Dataslate video that it basically they can now no longer move out and fire with, well, they can no longer fall back as a counteract and fire their heavy weapons or reposition and fire their heavy weapons. So that even with a dash, so it's just nerf for that weird counteract interaction, but otherwise they're great. Legionary are winners. Oddly, I was expecting Fickle Fates to change. So the way it works now is if you're ready, you get Ceaseless. Well, when you're shooting at someone who's ready, you get Ceaseless. And if you're undivided, you get Relentless instead, which is it's crazy. The team is like, its shooting got buffed last Balance Dataslate, and they haven't changed it. They remained an incredibly powerful team with amazing shooting as well as close combat. Their bad matchups also got nerfed, namely the Eldari teams, and they're still a powerful meta pick. They do really well into Goremongers. They're actually quite good into Sanctifiers as well. The only thing holding them back is that they're a Yassified team, so they're a Year 1 classified team. But otherwise, Legionary are like stealing it. I think people still haven't clocked on to how powerful Ceaseless / Relentless shooting is from these guys, especially if you have like a Slanesh Melter or even an Undivided Melter. They're a very, very powerful team, even after all the nerfs they saw. Kommandos are also winners. As per other factions, their bad matchups got nerfed. They don't like Eldari teams because of how many crits they can generate, and that's all hurt, which is great for the Kommandos. They saw no nerfs. The Bomb Squid got clarified to not score opponent tac ops, which is just a nice clarification, and they can play well into most meta threats. From the Commando players I've spoken to, the Sanctifier matchup is still horrible, But at least now you can stage up against them, and they can kind of do well into Goremongers. It's not too bad, and they have a solid game into elites. They're really just a nice all-round faction, which is why I like what Kommandos occupy. Inquisitorial Agents are winners. They saw no nerfs. Not that they probably would have gotten any. They still remain a strong counter to a lot of kill teams. The fact Absolute Authority can just turn off key ploys once per turning point / per game makes them very powerful. They disrupt a lot of teams like Plague Marines hate them, Hierotek Circle hate them, lots of teams hate them, and they're just great at punishing elites in general because of the tools they have and the activations. They are also not fond of Goremongers and Sanctifiers, but otherwise, if you're an Inquisitorial Agent player, they're still really solid. And as someone who plays a team who hates Inquisitorial Agents, I'm still terrified of running into them because of the tools they have and tricks. They've still got ceaseless shooting, they've got lots of tricks, ceaseless melee. They're no slouch. They're still hard to play, but they're a really good counterpick into a lot of popular threats at the moment. Moving on to losers, we have Warpcoven, kinda. So Capricious Plan no longer grants a dash and change order. You can only do one. So this hurts the free punishing at 9 inches with teleport, because what they would do is reposition 6, dash, shoot you, then spend a CP to dash back, teleport back, and change their order. Now they can't really do that. They can still do the dash aspect, but if they were hiding like in the open behind heavy cover, they now will be shootable. So you have a lot of ways to punish that more. However, they still remain one of the best kill teams in the game, and are probably the best kill team, right? The fact they're flexible, they can go from elite to a very large kill team with 3 sorcerers and like 6 Zangor, so 9 operatives. They have lots of dice control and damage output and healing and movement shenanigans. They are very, very good. They have been consistently overperforming as well from the last 3 months despite their nerfs. Like, especially if you want to win events, I'm surprised we're not seeing more Warpcoven. They're still amazing. The only downside is they are also a Yassified team, so after September, they are going to disappear from official GW events and maybe some other big events. But otherwise, Warpcoven are still terrifyingly powerful. Fellgor Ravagers are losers. The goats have finally been stewed. Frenzy is now nerfed to end when a counteraction ends too, not just your activation. This is really useful for horde teams that outnumber Fellgor, where Fellgor would have counteracts, so that's really nice for those teams. Reckless Determination no longer double stacks while you're in cover, so you only ever get 1 source, which, by the way, was a change from last edition. They've just eventually carried over. Same with the Gnarlscar and Mangler. They've gone back to 10 wounds, which was a change from last edition. The Shaman's shooting attack was downgraded from Seek to Seek Light, but this seems like a more general change which they've done altogether. Although it did nerf the ammo pile shoot with Seek, which was probably too obnoxious, but Games Workshop seemingly were aware of it. And lots of severe nerfs, but still one of the best melee kill teams. I know people say they're unplayable. I think they're just worse into elite kill teams now and have to respect horde teams a bit more. Otherwise, I think Fellgor are still great. Like, I don't think they change in power. They just become a little bit worse, right? Otherwise, they still have all these powerful abilities. I also forgot to mention Ambush no longer buffs accuracy. It just makes you hit harder, which is also another nerf. But outside of that, I still think Fellgor are in a great position. They still roadblock a lot of other kill teams, specifically ranged kill teams like Pathfinders and even other large horde teams. So they're still in a great spot. They're just a bit harder to play. Corsair Voidscarred are losers. The Kernite Hunter now only fights first while ready instead of if he's never fired his bird, right? So he's not as easy to roadblock with. The Shade Runner saw several nerfs. It can only do its slicing attack against someone it sees at the start of its activation. It can't teleport and dash, so it is a bit worse, although you can get around that by spending a CP in the strategy phase to dash with it, then use its slicing attack if you go in first, because it now can't use that dash, but it is oddly slow in a kill team that's very fast. And now Warding Shield doesn't block crits. It works like all other abilities except for the one with Goremongers. So what does this mean? Corsairs used to be able to set up a really uninteractive defensive wall. If you got too close, they would easily punish you without risk and then shut you down. Now they have to play a little bit more honestly. They can't be as aggressive as they could with Warding Shield. The Shade Runner, I've seen a lot of people say they're going to drop the Shade Runner now. I think the Shade Runner, you just play more like you probably have that one just protecting your home objective and play a bit more, you know, carefully with it when you're trying to stage up. The Kernite Hunter is still great. It's just no longer as powerful as it was. So Corsairs did get worse, but that's more in their defensive play, which might hurt them overall because I don't think not many people were harnessing the true power of their defensive play, but those that could showed how powerful it was, and it has been hit. Hand of the Archon are heavy losers. It hurts the more I think about it. So the Razorwing Bird has gone down from 5 dice to 4 dice, which is fair. It still has the ability to ignore obscuring and is still silent. So it's still 4 dice, hitting on 4s, 1-2 damage, seek, saturate, silent, which is great. It was too unfair at 5 attacks. The amount of stuff I killed with my bird was crazy. So now it's a lot fairer to deal with. Stimulated Sensors, however, now only provides a single reroll instead of ceaseless. This is a huge nerf, and it kind of heavily impacts the faction. They are now like punished. Well, it's not punished. They can't be as aggressive as they could, and they are no longer as guaranteed to get attacks through. It is a big nerf, and it's like while the Razorwing change was playable, stimulated sensors being nerfed is rough for the team. It does definitely bring them down a power level. They're still really good. They're great at the attack ops, but they are now a more risky tempo team than how they used to be before, where they were like still a tempo team, but with that ceaseless reroll for saves and shooting, they weren't as risky. But it's not great for Hand of the Archon players. It's a lot of pain. Void Dancer Troupe were losers also, kind of. So Epic no longer triggers when retaliating, so you only get the balance when you fight and kill someone melee. And the Accolade doesn't provide balance when retaliating, so now you only get the benefits when you're fighting, which is nice, but it is a weird nerf, as I'm pretty sure most Void Dancer Troupe players were playing Melodrama, so they're getting the balanced and shooting, which is the better option now. So it is technically a nerf to Void Dancer Troupe, but I still think they're in a great position. They are now just kind of railroaded into playing a shooting team that bursts into melee and does stuff, but it is kind of a nerf to their flexibility, which does make them a bit of a loser. Nemesis Claw also losers. They are technically nerfed on Gallowdark, as Return to Darkness now no longer ignores walls, so you can't run towards your opponent in Gallowdark, so you can't aggressively stage up, especially turning point 1. Otherwise, they're still a great meta pick. Like, even just looking at the stats, they're a faction that's likely to place, may not win an event, but will definitely get you in the top 3, or make you like 1 loss and then the rest wins. They're still very, very good at what they do, and what they do ain't pretty. But overall, they are slight losers. One Gallowdark where they dominated, but it makes sense. So it will, because it changes how they play, it does make them losers. Hernkyn Salvager are losers. So the Jump Pack Warrior has now been reduced from 8 inches to 7 inches of movement, but it still gets its fly when it repositions and dashes and charges, but it doesn't get extra movement. The Writ of Khaine has been reworked to no longer guarantee initiative. So the way it used to work, you'd get +1 to the initiative roll for every objective you contested and controlled. So if you contested and controlled 2 objectives, you'd get +4 to the initiative. Now is if you contest 2 or more objectives, you get to re-roll the initiative dice, which is actually still, I think, at least a 60% chance to take the initiative if you have a way to break ties. So like if you've won scouting and made your opponent go first. So they still have a way to alpha strike, but it's no longer guaranteed. And when you look through Games Workshop games, anything that guarantees the initiative has always been severely nerfed. So this was very unlikely to survive, but they're still solid. Like, even if you scouting, reposition the Jump Pack Warrior, it will move 13 inches, so it has a 15-inch threat range, you know, so it has a lot of ways to crack. And then if you staged aggressively enough, then you have a decent chance of winning the initiative and still doing the alpha strike. They've just brought risks to it instead of making it for free. So they're still very powerful. They still have great shooting, but because it heavily impacts a lot of the way their players were playing, because a lot of them were abusing it, it now does make them losers. I still think they're in a good spot, but we'll see how it shakes out. Sanctifiers are also kind of losers. Lead the Possession now no longer works turning point 1, so they can't speed run to your drop zone. They still remain likely the best kill team in the game. It's between them and Warpcoven personally. They keep powerful disruption tools, damage negation, mobility, damage output, just command points, so many powerful tools. I actually am kind of terrified now. Sanctifier players will need to learn how to play the game, because the strength and lead the possession wasn't rushing down your opponent. It's the fact you can easily switch from one side of the board to the other, or if you're in a lead, you can just immediately run away from your opponent. So there's no real way around that. You just have to hope your opponent doesn't know how to maximize how powerful Sanctifiers are. Like, they definitely will get some more nerfs in the next Balance Dataslate, but they are worse to play if you just liked rushing down your opponent. They are still, however, still absolutely terrifying to face and are still likely the best, or definitely one of the best kill teams in the game. Ratlings are losers. Tripwire can no longer be placed within 2 inches of access points and accessible terrain like other mines. They are now a lot harder to play on Gallodark because you now have to actually allow your opponent to move up the board, but tripwires will still slow anything that is a 32mm base or larger, because if you place it outside of 2 inches, so just on the edge of the 2 inches of an access point, it's still, as long as where you place it, it will have a 1 inch radius bubble that only 25 and generally 28mm bases can get around. 32mm bases you would have to like heavily place the mine to one side, but otherwise it will still hurt like Marines and stuff. It just means hordes and smaller based models have more counterplay to the mine, which, you know, is still a big problem for Ratlings, but especially when you're playing on Games Workshop Gallodark maps due to their large rooms, is still powerful there, just not as great on open, so it does affect how Ratling plays, which does make them a bit of a loser at the moment. Hierotek Circle are losers. Now look, they are still a solid meta pick at the moment, like they're really good at counterpicking, like especially for people who haven't expected them and practiced into them. And I'm not saying they're horrible. I actually think they're pretty good. I just would have liked to see 1 or 2 minor buffs for the kill team. They got nothing. And the issue is the Technomancer and Psychomancer are effectively unusable compared to the Chronomancer. And you still have your turning point, like you can potentially turning point 1 out, well, not Alpha Strike, but turning point 1 strike with your teleport. The Chronomancer is just way too good, and the Technomancer and Psychomancer have no reason to be taken at the moment. I would probably say like the Psychomancer range goes up to 6 inches for its aura, and let the Technomancer heal for 3d free. Just give them, make the other Cryptex playable at least if you're going to like do something to the team. Otherwise, they're still fine. It's just overall, I would have liked some more, you know, internal balance improvements. Imperial Navy Breachers are losers. Deckhand got buffed to work with accessible terrain, which helps on open, but you are spending a CP to move through normally accessible terrain, which, you know, you can use it with your hatchway cutter, which is fine, but they saw no other buffs, and they are still heavily struggling. They have hardly any representation, and is it any wonder why? I think at this point, you could either make their shotguns hit on 2s or make their shotguns 4 damage. I guess they're too small, but Breachers need a lot of buffs. They're just not seeing the love, and I'm not sure why. Hunter Clade are losers, and if you see this meme, you'll understand why. All leaders got Control Protocol, which basically allows you to give someone for free, once per turning point, a different Doctriner, which is okay. It's nice, but it still doesn't address the core issues of the kill team. Maybe they're just treading water for Battle Clade, which likely will be a replacement for this kill team and should be out within a month or 2, hopefully. But I mean, at this point, I would just make Rostalker's 8-inch move, built-in optimized gate, you know? Just give them something. I don't know why they're so terrified of buffing Hunter Clade, but they're not in a great spot at the moment. Like, in some theoretical world, they're amazing, but no one lives in that dimension to use them to that level. So for the overview, there were actually lots of internal rebalances this time, more so than last Balance Dataslate, and they addressed a lot of toxic interactions / gameplay loops, namely like guaranteed initiative alpha strikes, ways to like freely punish the opponent. So those were mostly all addressed. I think the only one that wasn't was the Broodbrother one. Sanctifiers will hit, were hit, but will still dominate. I mean, at this point, I kind of expect them to get an emergency hit, maybe at the end of May or June, but definitely they'll get hit again by July, but they're still absolutely terrifying to play against. Lots of teams have been hemmed in by the Blood and Zeal teams, whether it's Sanctifiers or Goremongers, and Goremongers saw no change. They are the new Fellgor, but faster, which is terrifying. So like even horde teams, which now can have a lot more play into elite kill teams have to go like, how am I going to deal with Goremongers or Sanctifiers? Most underperforming teams were heavily buffed, which was great to see. As I said, the only ones that really weren't were Hunter Clade and Imperial Navy Breachers, which is just really a shame for them. But everything else was majorly buffed to the point where I think Tempestus Aquilons were probably buffed too much. Eldari teams got hurt heavily. The only ones that really escaped were Blades of Khaine and Mandrakes. Like, I think Hand of the Archon got it the worst. Right, they lost a lot of their accuracy and defensive power with the change to stimulated senses, but Corsairs got hit with their defensive play as well. But we are going into a very strange meta. I know a lot of people don't like bringing it up, but we are in a very basic form of rock, paper, scissors. Kill Team is still a skill-based game, but there are now more matchups where certain kill teams just cannot beat other certain kill teams. For example, like Pathfinders just can't beat Goremongers and Fellgor, but this does expand into other teams. Like, definitely most Horde teams are terrified of Goremongers. Fellgor is a bit more playable, but if you're like a mostly shooting team with very little melee presence, I'm not sure how you still deal with Fellgor and Goremongers. And then also when it comes to Goremongers, they have to watch out for elites, although it's not unwinnable. So we're kind of at this stage where it still comes down to player skill, but there are still factions that are skewed so much. No matter what kill team you're bringing, it's not impossible, but it feels like an unwinnable matchup. And while it's generally better, it's still a very strange meta. Like, it's technically better than the last month we had, but it's not amazing. But overall, ignoring this weird meta state we're into, the Balance Dataslate was generally good. I would have liked to see some more buffs, and some of the nerfs were pretty confusing. Like for Chaos Cult and Plague Marine specifically, those were just very strange nerfs that aren't really going to impact those teams too much. And, you know, obviously Warpcoven just got a minor slap on the wrist. They're still very powerful. So it will be interesting to see how it shakes up. We should be getting the Raveners and the Battle Clade soon. So we'll see how those shake up, especially as Games Workshop have seemingly tried to future-proof counteracting when it comes to, well, counteracting. So it's going to be interesting, especially if the next box, Typhon, follows the train of Blood and Zeal and like really messes up the meta, or if it follows like the previous two boxes and then keeps things more stable with a slight interesting twist. I will say Aquilons are still very good at the moment, but Aquilons, like, I think they're terrifying for everything that isn't basically a Blood and Zeal team. But otherwise, you know, we have a lot of interesting new threats. Pathfinders, as I said, they're a big threat. We have these new, like, unquantifiable elements, which makes it, you know, a bit, who knows what's going to come up. So it's going to be very interesting for the next 3 months. But that's pretty much it from me today. Please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of the video. What do you think of the winners and losers? Do you think I've missed out anyone? I know I forgot Phobos, but I think Phobos are just kind of where they are. They are still very good and a skill-based team. But let me know. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out for free in the episode description below, and a affiliate link at Element Games, and a affiliate link and discount code at Crossfire Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support. I'm just going to shout my patrons. So for my adepts of the crew, I have Tom, the Houston Toad, Super Cow, Sam, Nick, Mercenary Q, Mr. Meatwad, Marshall, Lucas, Jeremiah, Graham, Fangzu, Draken, Dave Meatswell, Dan, Data Goldens, Chris, and Amorphium. So thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me and helps support the channel. So yeah, I've got the Goonhammer Open coming up this weekend. So when this video goes up this weekend, so I get to see more stuff in person. But generally, I'm like, you know, a bit more optimistic, and I have kind of been forced into Plague Marines to play in this meta. I still feel for people who don't want to pick those kind of teams, like even Elite Kill Team or one of the Blood and Zeal teams, which I completely get. But looking outside of the unquantifiable Blood and Zeal, I think the Balance Dataslate was generally pretty good. And, you know, Games Workshop have shown they're quite keen to buff stuff and internally rebalance stuff, not just going off of stats alone. So they generally are talking to their likely playtesters for feedback, as well as keeping an eye on the community. For example, like the Fellgor thing with the silent shooting, I didn't even think of that. I think that was a very interesting hit, so it was nice work there. So I'm still optimistic about the future of the game, and obviously we've got Typhon. But remember, no matter whether your kill team's a winner or loser, you always have a chance to win, as long as you can roll a crit.